This is Field Notes from The Proving, short reflections from inside the process of building a life that's earned, not perfected, earned. The happiest place on earth is a strange place to discover you're terrified. Disney was booked in December of 2024, long before a knee injury, long before any physical therapy took place, long before my Philadelphia debacle where I really did actually hurt my knee. Back when this race was supposed to be simple and fun, because Lewis and I absolutely love Disney, and specifically Disney World in Orlando. We are Disney people through and through. It is the most magical place on earth. It is the greatest place to feel like a kid and an adult and be happy literally 24/7. We always have loved Disney. Everything about it, from the rides, the atmosphere, the food, the characters, the fireworks, the imagination, and honestly, the feeling that for a few days, the world just gets a little lighter. Disney has become one of those places in our lives that consistently brings us joy. And despite all the times that we visited, there was one thing we never actually did, was a Disney race. If you ever tried registering for one, you know exactly how difficult they are to get into. People travel literally all over the world to get into them, and they sell out super quickly. And for runners, completing a Disney race feels like a bucket list experience, 1000%. When we sign up, all we saw was a vacation. But what we didn't realize was that by April, Disney would become something entirely different. It would become a test. So what was the goal? Well, earlier that year, I made the commitment to myself, 1 half marathon every month in 2025. Not because anyone asked me to, because I wanted to see if I could do it, and I really wanted to see what I was made of. So January, check, completed. February, check, completed. March, check, completed. The goal was alive. And now April arrived. Disney wasn't just a vacation race anymore. Disney was April. Disney was the next chapter, and Disney was the next test. So for the vacation, we arrived on April 2nd, and honestly, everything was exactly what we hoped it to be. Magic Kingdom, the castle, Tron, fireworks, then Epcot, Animal Kingdom, Kilimanjaro safaris, the Navi River journey, all the things that we looked forward to for months. It was truly just a week filled with joy. But the strange thing about anxiety is that it doesn't care really where you are. You could be standing in front of the Cinderella's castle and still be thinking about your knee and whether or not it's going to blow out, whether things are worse than they seem or better than they seem, or is it going to get worse or will it get better? Because at that point, everything had changed. Shamrock was over, Philadelphia happened, physical therapy started, a brace arrived, and now I was walking through Disney wondering, is this actually working? Not eventually, not 6 months from now, literally right now, because this race wasn't about Disney anymore. This race was proof that the physical therapy was helping, proof that it wasn't getting worse, and the proof that I could still run and chase all my dreams. The hardest part, honestly, wasn't the pain. It was what the pain represented, because somewhere along the way, running became part of my identity. And if you've read or listened to any of the transcripts or the parts of these podcasts, you know identity is a major part of my life. I work towards this identity and have tried to rebuild it since 2024. I worked so hard to get here. The speed, the endurance, the confidence, pride. And maybe what scared me the most wasn't losing running, but maybe I was afraid of losing who I was becoming through this process. Because Shamrock gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time, pride, but like real pride. And I wasn't ready to let go of that feeling. At this point, physical therapy only had been a few weeks. I was going once a week, doing the exercises, making sure I felt great, listening to and learning about my body, trying to understand what exactly is happening. At the time, he was just my physical therapist. Looking back, he became one of the most important people through my running journey, helping me understand and coach me through the injuries along the way. He didn't just help me run, he taught me how to trust that my knee will be fine during this process. So on race morning, April 6, 2025, early doesn't even begin to describe the race. By 4:10 in the morning, we were already there. Thousands of runners corrals of people, headlamps, stretching, the waiting, thinking, overthinking. The race wouldn't start for me until about 6 o'clock. And standing there, I wasn't worried about my pace. I wasn't worried about the time. I wasn't worried about the lack of sleep. I wasn't worried about anything else. I was just wondering whether my body would cooperate that day or not. And if you ever ran a Disney race before, it's hard to explain just how big of an event it is. Most races, quite honestly, feel like a race. You kind of know you have the big arch or the balloons, and you kind of have the shorter kind of chutes that things go into. Not Disney. It is a genuine production. Even at 4 o'clock in the morning, might I add. You have fireworks, you have music, you have DJs, you have announcements, lights, characters, merchandise tents, volunteers everywhere, and runners, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And I remember looking around thinking, who are all these people? How are we able to sit here all in the same area? Because while most of the world was asleep, Disney was fully awake and ready to run. Cars were lined up for miles, crowds moving in every direction, people stretching, taking pictures, people laughing, nervous. You could see the warrior mindsets of people chasing goals. And somehow Disney manages to create an energy at an hour when energy, quite honestly, should not exist. It was absolute chaos, but the good kind. The kind that makes you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. And standing there in the middle of all of it for the first time all week, I wasn't overthinking anything. I was just thinking about the race. A few weeks earlier, I told myself I was taking time off, recover, heal, be smart. Instead, I bought a brace, a hamstring brace specifically, a support sleeve. Anything that made me feel more protected and made me feel a bit more stable and ready. Physical therapy believed my hamstrings were incredibly tight, so I showed up wearing braces on both sides, partially for support, partially for confidence, and partially because I wanted to believe that this was the fix that I needed. And maybe my favorite decision that morning was the shirt. I wore my Philadelphia Love Run shirt, the race I never finished, that humbled me to no end, that sent me to physical therapy, the race that forced me to confront the fact that I was not invincible. And part of me couldn't hide from it and pretend like it didn't happen. Instead, I carried it with me and went to war. Before the race, I remember something my physical therapist told me: don't baby your running, just run. Because during Philadelphia, I spent so much time protecting the knee that I changed the way I moved. And ironically, that probably made things worse. So this time I made a decision: run normally, trust the work, trust the process, and trust your body. The first mile was 8:23. Comfortable, controlled, patient. Then something happened. I started feeling like myself again. I started to settle in. You feel your heart rate kind of slow down. Your mindset starts to shift throughout Epcot, throughout Hollywood Studio, along World Drive, past attractions I'd spent years visiting as a guest, now running through them as part of the course. The air was cool, parks were quiet. And for the first time since Philadelphia, I wasn't thinking about being injured. I was just on my own, in the zone, running, where I genuinely love to be. And maybe this is why Disney ended up being the perfect place for this race. Because Disney had always been built around believing something is possible before there's evidence. And that's exactly where I was, trying to believe again. So what happened? Mile 6 came through 7:35, mile 8, 7:40, mile 9, 7:13, mile 10, 6:53. The faster I ran, the more confident I became, not because of every pace, but because my body was responding. The legs felt strong and breathing felt easy. Movement felt natural, and every step felt like evidence that maybe I was not breaking after all. And finally, the race ended. 10 miles, 0.24, 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 26 seconds at a 7:45 pace. While I was proud of the result wasn't the most important part. Disney gave me something far more valuable: confidence. Because Disney wasn't the first race after the injury. Disney was the first race where I trusted my body again. For the first time since Philly, I stopped wondering if I could run and simply ran. But the funny thing is, looking back, Disney taught me the right lesson and the wrong lesson. On the one hand, the right lesson was that I could still run, which was great, and honestly what I needed to hear. The wrong lesson, though, was believing that I felt that I was healed, because confidence and recovery are not the same thing. And unfortunately, at that point, I had not learned that lesson just yet. But at the time, none of that mattered because another race was waiting, Mystic, Connecticut. Denise and I were preparing for her first 10K, and I was preparing for my next half marathon. Disney gave me the confidence. Mystic would give me ambition. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about what I lost. I was thinking about what's next. But what I learned throughout this process was that sometimes confidence doesn't come from setting a personal record. Sometimes it comes from proving to yourself that you're still standing after a setback, because fear has a way of convincing you that one bad moment changes everything. Most of the time, it doesn't. Most of the time, it's just another chapter. And sometimes the first step forward isn't running faster. It's learning to trust yourself again. The work continues.